Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Thank you. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. And Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Purvajikacharya Astotar Tata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Purvajikacharya Astotar Tata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavindra Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimati Radharani Ki Jai. Shri Radhastami Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So on this glorious Radhastami day, the appearance day of Srimati Radharani, I'll try to say a few words about the glories of Srimati Radharani based on Srila Prabhupada's books. So I'm sorry I didn't have a verse written on the board, but I want to begin with verse 6 of chapter 1 of the Adi Leela in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which describes the internal reasons for Lord Chaitanya's appearance. And it very much has to do with the glories of Srimati Radharani. Shri Radhaya pranaya mahima kidrisho vanayaya ba swadyo yenad buddha madurima kidrisho vamadiyaha saukyam chasya manonobhavata kidrisham veti lobhad tadbhavadya samajanishachi garbhasindo harindu. Desiring to understand the glory of Srimati Radharani's love for Krishna, the wonderful qualities in him that she alone relishes through her love, and the happiness she feels when she realizes the sweetness of his love, the Supreme Lord Hari, richly endowed with her emotions, appeared from the womb of Srimati Shachi Devi as the moon appeared from the ocean. So just one word on this before we read some sections from this chapter 4, that the whole details of Srimati Radharani's qualities and pastimes and everything has only become manifest to us because of Lord Chaitanya's appearance and this verse in which Krishna came as Lord Chaitanya to experience the love of Srimati Radharani for Krishna. So all of that comes so much detail from the Goswamis, Jiva Goswami, and Rupa Goswami with his Ujjvala Nilamani, which is all about the conjugal ras. That has become manifest to us in this time. Otherwise, before that, she was, of course, mentioned in the different Puranas, and she's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but not her name isn't mentioned. But all these details have come out because of Lord Chaitanya's appearance and those who followed him. So now I'm going to skip to a verse in the latter part of the 4th chapter. The 4th chapter deals with the explication of this particular verse I just read, 4th chapter of the Adi Leela. And just by way of a little introduction, Krishna's Kaviraj, he gives a very detailed description of who Srimati Radharani is. And he begins with this description of the different kind of energies of Krishna and internal energies, of which Srimati Radharani is one, personified, the Ladini Shakti. Ladini Shakti means the pleasure that, the energy that gives Krishna pleasure, and the most pleasure. Srimati Radharani personifies that energy, as we'll hear. And then there's the Samvid potency, which is the knowledge potency, by which Krishna knows himself and he makes everyone else known, and his Leela are known from that. And Sandini Shakti, which manifests all of the things, so-called things in the spiritual world, the land and so forth. And this is under the auspices of Lord Balaram. As we know, the temple, sometimes I have to remind the devotees, I know you didn't lean against the wall, but it seemed like you were leaning against the wall. But the wall and the ground, the temple, the paraphernalia on the altar, are all expansions of Balaram. He's in charge of that Samvit potency. So, this is text, now I'm going to read text 6 of the, 68, excuse me, of the 4th chapter of the Adi Leela of Chaitanya Charitamrita by Srila Prabhupada, and then we'll read a purport. The confidential, this title is entitled The Confidential Reasons for the Appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Ladinira Sara Prema Prema Sara Bhava Bhavara Paramakashta Nama Mahabhava. The essence of the Ladini potency, this is the pleasure potency of Krishna, internal spiritual pleasure potency. The essence of that Ladini potency is love of God. The essence of love of God is emotion or bhava. And the ultimate development of emotion is Mahabhava. And that's explained in detail here. And then just the next verse. Mahabhava Swarup Shri Radha Thakurani Sarvaguna Kani Krishna Kanta Shiromani. Shri Radha Thakurani is the embodiment of Mahabhava. She is the repository of all good qualities and the crest jewel among all the lovely consorts of Lord Krishna. And I'll just read this purport is pretty short. Purport: the unadulterated action of the Ladini Shakti is displayed in the dealings of the damsels of Braja and Srimati Radharani, who is the topmost participant in that transcendental group. The essence of the Ladini Shakti is love of Godhead. The essence of love of Godhead is bhava, or transcendental sentiment, and the highest pitch of that bhava is called mahabhava. Shrimati Radharani is the personified embodiment of these three aspects of transcendental consciousness. She is therefore the highest principle in love of Godhead and in this supreme lovable object of Sri Krishna. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance to him and to all members of Sri Parampara. So, in the previous purport, Srila Prabhupada described how this Ladini Shakti, when it comes in contact with the material energy, is transformed into kama, into lust, and it produces misery. Krishna says in the 3rd chapter that our greatest enemy is this material desire headed by material sex desire, which is transformed into wrath or anger and the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. So Srila Prabhupada explains in one of the purports there, how this kama is simply prema that has been adulterated and transformed, curdled, if you will, by contact with the material energy, with the three modes of nature. And so, but in its purest form, this Ladini Shakti is personified as Srimati Radharani, is pure love of Godhead. That sentiment in which the only motive of those who possess it is to please Krishna, is to give Krishna pleasure, rather than try to please our own senses. This is the relationship there. So then text 70 of this chapter, Tayarapyabhyo madhye radhika sarvatadika mahabhava sarupayam guna atipadishviyasi. Of these two gopis, this previous verse, Radharani and Chandravali, Srimati Radharani is superior in all respects. She is the embodiment of Mahabhava, and she surpasses all in good qualities. I'll just read the translation here. Her mind, senses, and body are steeped in love for Krishna. She is Krishna's own energy, and she helps him in his pastimes. Prabhupada explains, Srimati Radharani is as fully spiritual as Krishna. No one should consider her to be material. She is definitely not like the conditioned souls who have material bodies, gross and subtle, covered by material senses. She is all spiritual, and both her body and her mind are of the same spiritual embodiment. Because her body is spiritual, her senses are also spiritual. Thus her body, mind, and senses fully shine in love of Krishna. She is the personified Ladini Shakti, the pleasure-giving energy of the Lord's internal potency. And therefore she is the only source of enjoyment for Sri Krishna. Sri Krishna cannot enjoy anything that is internally different from him. Therefore Radha and Sri Krishna are identical. The Sandhini portion of Sri Krishna's internal potency has manifested the all-attractive form of Sri Krishna, and the same internal potency in the Ladini feature has presented Srimati Radharani, who is the attraction for the all-attractive. No one can match Srimati Radharani in the transcendental pastimes of Sri Krishna. Now, we may be a little bit puzzled, but, well, how is she the only source of pleasure for Krishna? Well, it's explained elsewhere that all the gopis are expansions of Srimati Radharani. And indeed that all the service that is rendered to Krishna and that gives him pleasure is mediated through Srimati Radharani. So really, whatever we do in devotional service, in our baby steps, is also, whatever success we have in pleasing Krishna is because Srimati Radharani has seen fit to transmit it to Krishna. So in one very important sense, she being the Ladini Shakti personified, all devotional service goes through her. So we can see how important this day is. And then Krishna's Kaviraj quotes Ananda Chinmaya Dasa Pratibhavitabhis from the Govinda prayers, the Brahma Samhita. And this is a very nice explanation of how Krishna expands through these energies. I worship Govinda, the primeval Lord who resides in his own realm Goloka with Radha, who resembles his own spiritual figure and who embodies the ecstatic potency of Radharani. Their companions are her confidants, who embody extensions of her bodily form and who are imbued and permeated with ever blissful spiritual rasa. So we know how confusing this world can be. It's full of all kinds of different objects of the senses, and on the bad side, there's all kinds of miseries. There's unlimited varieties. So we should understand that all of this variety is a reflection, a perverted reflection, of the variety in the spiritual world. And so we've all experienced so many different varieties of emotions and relationships and things even in our short material life. So in the spiritual world, in Goloka Vrindavan, in Brajabhumi, in the most intimate section of the spiritual world, where Brajabhumi, where there are these unlimited varieties of within each rasa of expressions of love for Krishna, giving him pleasure. For instance, I'm going to read these later, the 25 main qualities of Srimati Radharani. And through those qualities, as she manifests activities that embody those qualities, she's pleasing Krishna in so many different ways. The infinite variety of the pastimes, and each day is new. You know, even though there's a definite schedule, and you read in Govinda Lilamrita, Ashtakali Alila, there's eight sections of the day, and the format is basically the same. Krishna gets up early in the morning. If he gets a little bit of sleep, he's at a meeting with Radharani at night, and they get up just in time to get home, so that when their parents are waking them, they're in bed. You know, and then he gets up. And then he gets up and he milks the cows, and meanwhile Radharani's preparing breakfast for him, and all of these different things. And then he goes out with the cows, and eventually Radharani sneaks out and she meets him off, you know. It's described different parts of the day. And within each of those pastimes, there's unlimited varieties. So it's never like hackneyed. Again, the same cows. No, it's not like that. You know, Krishna is calling the cows are also relating to him, they're fully conscious. And so every moment is new. Unlike this world, where things become hackneyed quickly. You're trying to enjoy something, and you enjoy it, and then no more. You know, how many Oreos can you eat before it's disgusting, you can't think. But it never grows tired in the spiritual world. There's unlimited variety of foodstuffs. She never cooks the same thing twice, you know. And so this is the origin, and it all begins with Srimati Radharani. She's the Radharani Shakti personified, giving Krishna pleasure. So this is such an important day. And here is described how she resembles a spiritual figure. She embodies the ecstatic potency, the expansions of Krishna's energy, and her companions are her confidants. So they also have very key roles to play. Ujjvala Nilamani, some of you may not know this. Of course, we're familiar with the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu in the form of the Nectar of Devotion. So many wonderful descriptions there of Krishna, the details of Krishna's friendship ras with his friends, and beautiful pastimes of Mother Yashoda, and how they're loving Krishna in the Vatsalya ras. But there's not that much about the conjugal ras. There's a chapter there, but it's pretty sketchy, because part 2 of the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu is the Ujjvala Nilamani, which is all dedicated to the conjugal ras. The different groups and then leaders of the groups are described there. There's a whole chapter on Srimati Radharani and her qualities and emotions and all these different things in great detail. So that's available in translation, but it's not something Srila Prabhupada gave us, so we're careful about that, because there's a lot of intimate lila there. So now Krishna's Kavya describes a little bit of how please listen to how Lord Krishna's concerts help him taste rasa and how they help in his pastimes. And Radharani is the crest jewel of all these jewel-like milkmaids. The beloved consorts of Krishna are of 3 kinds: the goddesses of fortune, the queens, and the milkmaids of Braja, who are the foremost of all. These consorts all proceed from Radhika. So we're familiar from reading Krishna book. Krishna has his peers, that whole pastime. We just had Janmashtami, it's very important, obviously. And then he grows up in Vrindavan, and there's 33 chapters, 34, 35 chapters of his Vrindavan Leela. And eventually he's taken to Mathura, back to Mathura, where he appeared, to kill Kamsa. And then, the crisis in Vrindavan, he doesn't return back then, because he feels that Jarasandha is going to attack, and there's his mother's parents are there, and he needs their protection, all the Mathura. And eventually, he moves everybody to Dwarka, and the whole Dwarka scene happens. He marries 16,108 queens. So what happened to those poor devotees in Vrindavan? So it's described how they're pining away. They're practically mad in this separation, you know. And you think, whoa, what a betrayal. You know, Krishna promised to come back. He didn't come back. He's causing them all this agony. But we learn from the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya that this separation ecstasy, which looks like suffering. I mean, Lord Chaitanya would show these, he would grind his face against the wall and would bleed sometimes, and crying, and you know, it seemed like agony. But it's actually the highest form of pleasure, because in that mood you're thinking of Krishna with great emotion and in great detail in separation. When on the material side, this separation is just pain. You know, the person left, they're not coming back, they're not calling, they're not texting. What happened? You know, maybe this was somebody else, and you instead of love, it turns to hate. It doesn't happen in the spiritual world. There may be the Shikshastika is so important, because it has a whole philosophy there. And at the end, Lord Chaitanya, he's completely in the mood of Radharani. Ashlishya padadatang pranashtama madarshanan marmahatang karotubha. Yatatatavabadadhata lambato mat prananatas tu saheva napara. And then there's a long explanation written by Lord Chaitanya of that verse. So the essence is that, forgive me, I'll give my little poem. Let Madhava embrace this maid who's fallen at his feet. Oh, let him trample me, or my most ardent hopes defeat, by never giving me a chance to see him anywhere, thus shattering my heart and plunging me into despair. You see, he is a restless libertine and not a saint, so let him act in any way he likes without restraint. Yet though his cruel and crooked ways may cause me constant woe, Krishna is the only Lord my heart shall ever know. And this love and separation, and there's a long explanation, and then this amazing passage in there where he says, if Krishna wants to be with some other gopi, then I'll take that gopi's hand and bring her to Krishna. And this is the essence of the whole mood of pure devotion, is that everything it takes second position behind the pleasure of Krishna. That's what the Bhagavad Gita is about. Arjuna was covered by Yogamaya so that he would be considering his material relationships with his teacher and with his grandfather, Bhishma Dev, and all the other relatives and friends, you know. And therefore he wasn't serving Krishna. He wasn't following Krishna's order. Krishna had his own plan, which seems to be the most painful thing Arjuna can contemplate, having to kill all these beloved friends and relatives, you know. But in the end, he realized this is the most paramount position. This is what I should be doing, is working to please Krishna. And therefore, kadashe vachanang tava, I will act as you say. So he came from that point of rebellion, of not wanting to satisfy his Krishna desires to that purity. So Srimati Radharani, in any condition, even Krishna, he desires to be separate from me. Well, that's what he desires. Okay, I'll take this other gopi and bring him to him, and I'll just meditate on him. So that's the great distinction between material and spiritual emotion. Material emotion is all self-centered, ultimately. And when our expectations aren't met, we become disappointed and generally sometimes suicidal, depressed, we take some drugs. You know, this is Vishuddha Sattva. This all of the Leela that we read about, Krishna and Radharani and all this, Vishuddha is completely pure, no tinges of the mode of ignorance or passion. It's quite inconceivable, but that's what's being spoken about here. So they all expand. They're all manifestations of Radharani. The gopis are expansions of Radharani, for sure. And they, as revealed by Rupa Goswami in the Lita Madhava, they also are manifest as the queens in Dwarka. And have a little different relate. The married mood, that's also a rasa. So it all emanates from Srimati Radharani. Just as the fountainhead, this is text 76, Lord Krishna is the cause of all incarnations, so Shri Radha is the cause of all these consorts. The goddesses of fortune are partial manifestations of Srimati Radhika, and the queens are reflections of her image. So there's technical terms here for that. Vaibhava Vilas and Vaibhava Prakash. The goddesses of fortune are her plenary portions, and they display forms of Vaibhava Vilas. Okay, we won't get into all this detail here. Technical. And they all have, all the Brajadevis have, the gopis have diverse bodily features. They are her expansions, are the instruments for expanding rasa. So it goes on to explain this. Among them are various groups of consorts in Braja who have various varieties of sentiments and mellows. They help Lord Krishna taste all the sweetness of the rasa dance and other pastimes. And this is highly developed, the explanation of this in the Ujjvala Nilamani, what the different groups of gopis are, who the leaders are, the different functions, so many different things. And you won't find anything like that in any other sampradaya. It's expanded to the ultimate degree and detail in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Okay, so this is some technical terms. I want to read now the 25 qualities of Srimati Radharani, chief qualities. Of course, she has unlimited qualities. But just as Krishna has 64 chief qualities, Radharani has 25 chief qualities, and these are described in the later in the Madhya Lila. And if you'll give me a second here. Yeah. Okay, so this is from chapter 23 of the Madhya Lila. This is the instructions of Sanatana Goswami. And I'll just read one verse of the Sanskrit. Ata Vrindavaneshwaya kirtante pravaraguna mododeyam navabayas chalapango dalasmita. Srimati Radharani's 25 chief transcendental qualities are: she's very sweet. 2, she's always freshly youthful. 3, her eyes are restless. 4, she smiles brightly. 5, she has beautiful auspicious lines. 6, she makes Krishna happy with her bodily aroma. 7, she is very expert in singing. 8, her speech is charming. 9, she's very expert in joking and speaking pleasantly. 10, she's very humble and meek. 11, she's always full of mercy. She is cunning. 12, 13, cunning is vidagda. 13, she is expert in executing her duties. 14, she's shy. 15, she's always respectful. 16, she's always calm. 17, she's always grave. 18, she's expert in enjoying life. 19, she's situated at the topmost level of ecstatic love. 20, she is the reservoir of loving affairs in Gokula. And 21, she is the most famous of submissive devotees. 22, she's very affectionate to elderly people. 23, she's very submissive to the love of her friends. 24, she's the chief gopi. And 25, she always keeps Krishna under her control. In short, she possesses unlimited transcendental qualities, just as Lord Krishna does. So in the Ujjvala Nilamani, each one of these is expanded, as verses given and they're described. So you can imagine what a waves of ecstasy that is. Some of these, let's see, very expert in joking and speaking pleasantly. So, humble and meek, always full of mercy. This described how one time a little calf was, chewing some grass, starting to get into that mode instead of just sucking the teats of the cow, and a straw pierced the mouth of the calf, and the little teardrops were coming. And Srimati Radharani was feeling so compassionate to this calf that she went to the calf and she pulled out the straw and she was petting the calf and like that. There's one of these. And very expert in singing. She makes Krishna happy with a bodily aroma. I was thinking about this today as I was walking to the temple through our lovely little old alley over here. And it's today's Monday, so it's trash day. So there were a bunch of garbage things there, and one of these, very smelly garbage cans was wafting over. I said, oh boy, wouldn't it be nice to be in a place where there's never any bad smells? where all this, and then this morning, it wasn't this garland, I gave this one away to Dimitri, who undoubtedly gave it away to someone else. He's not wearing it now. A wonderful garland. You were given the companion garland. Yeah, I could give it how he came out and give it. I think they've been wearing those all night, you know. Very fragrant garland. And I was thinking, oh, how wonderful, you know, this has been worn by the deity. And it's all, everything is like that. There's all limited varieties of wonderful fragrances. And, you know, Krishna's bodily aroma, you know, is so attractive, and Radharani's, and his, you know, it's like that. Thank you. And then you have, you know, this situation where Krishna kills Putana, who's a demoness after all, you know. But she's so purified that when they cut up her body and burn it, it gives off this wonderful fragrance of a guru. So this is the spiritual world. And Srimati Radharani, of course, is all full of wonderful fragrances. And she's always very respectful. And this is another wonderful aspect. Mother Yashoda loves Radharani just like, you know, Krishna. She got this benediction from Durvasa Muni, right? That everything she cooked would be completely heavenly. I think she got it with the benediction. And so she never cooks the same thing twice. But when Mother Yashoda heard that, she said, oh, she should be cooking the breakfast for Krishna every day. So she invites her to come, and she spends so much time in the kitchen and produces these wonderful. And then when Krishna is honoring or taking the prasadam, I should say prasadam, yeah. She's looking out, you know, from the corner there. She doesn't want to make it too obvious, and she's in the window looking at how Krishna's relishing the different preparations. So this, you know, you can see how this is the pinnacle of loving affairs, and we have, you know, our role. Everyone has a role there, and to make arrangements, just like the pujaris. You know, what are they doing? It's just they're making arrangements. Shringar, we sing every morning. The Shringar is the loving affairs. You know, so the flowers and the garments and the fragrances and the mantras, all of this enhances the enjoyment of Radha and Krishna. And because we are part and parcel of Krishna, therefore we experience real pleasure by giving pleasure to Radha and Krishna, by giving Krishna pleasure by helping Radha enjoy, give him pleasure. That's the actual constitutional position of the living entity. And our whole philosophy is based on that. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma jnanabatam anukulyena krishnanushilanam bhaktiruttama. That the supreme bhakti, the pure devotional service, which is what we aim for, defined right at the beginning of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. This is the subject matter of this book. Nothing material, you know, nothing less than pure devotion. Not covered, not diluted by any material desire. Anya abhilashita shunyam, which is characterized jnana, karma, and anabhatam. Jnana means a desire for liberation, and karma means desire for any kind of gross or subtle sense gratification. Uncovered, unpolluted. Then what is it? That's what it isn't. Anukulyena krishnanushilanam. Activity, shilanam is behavior. We should be very careful to distinguish between the word shila and shila. Notice the difference in the long and short. Shila is behavior, and shila is the stone, as a shalagram shila. It means a completely different word. So the behavior or activities that are only aimed, intended to please Krishna. Sometimes in our material imperfections we may not succeed. We may make a mess of it, we're trying to cook for Krishna and it doesn't come out right. But if the intention is simply to please Krishna, then Krishna accepts it, you know, provided that we work on it so that we perfect the service. We learn how to cook properly. That's part of the service, getting better. So, and then the last one, she always keeps Krishna under her control. So, are there any comments or questions, additions? There's so much that we said, there's so many pastimes. Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, I want to understand, so the love which Mother Yashoda has, that also comes from Srimati Radharani?
Yes. When you study in the CC, yes. It's all a manifestation, because the different rasas, when you study them, you have Shanta ras, which is just passive, but you're appreciating the greatest of Krishna. Your pleasure is simply in thinking of Krishna. You're completely peaceful, free of all material desire. And there's manifestations of that. And it's said that the flute has that rasa, you know. And then you go up to different rasas, the Dasya and Sakya and Vatsalya. And each further ras contains the previous ones, right? The Dasya ras, that's also simply thinking of Krishna, enjoying, but there's also active service. Sakya ras, there's more familiarity, there's less formality as the servant and the master. And Krishna enjoys that more. And then you have the Vatsalya ras, the parental ras, and who could be a better friend of Krishna than his loving mother, right? It's okay, but there's that maintenance active. And then in the conjugal ras, there's the added activity of the conjugal relationship. So that contains all of the other rasas in there. And you know, they also have that. What are they doing? They're always thinking of Krishna. They're serving him. They're his best friends, as Krishna says. You are my, you know, about the gopis. So yes, it's hard to see how that is, but that also is contained in Vatsalya Rasa is contained there.
Well, was that your question? Oh, okay. I thought his question was, Yashoda being a gopi, is her service also facilitated by Srimati Radharani?
Oh, no.
But that's not what your
no, that's
question
not.
was. It wasn't. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Maharaj.
Well, you read very sweetly Radharani's 25 qualities.
Yeah.
But Krishna has 64 transcendental qualities.
Yes.
But Prabhupada points out in the TLC that even though he has 64 and she has 25, she controls Krishna.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada said you should always dress Radharani a little more beautiful than Krishna. That way Krishna will never leave.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, Gol, Dravida Prabhu.
Hi,
Can
Bo.
you take a remote question?
Hare Krishna.
Hold on, Vijay. Hold on.
Yes, I can wait. No problem.
Thank you.
Right, so my question is, you said that the gopis are expansions of Srimati Radharani, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, but I thought I heard somewhere once that they were reincarnated sages, because do you know what I'm talking about? There was these sages who wanted to... Yeah, so how is
all right,
are they both?
All right.
Is my question.
Well, so I think now there's actually two classifications of sages who become gopis. One, personified Vedas. They also became gopis, and as Maharaj has explained, the great sages in the Dandakaranya forest who were meditating, and then Ram came there and they said, "Oh, we want to give you this intimate service." He said, "No. In this incarnation, I only have one wife, but you'll take birth. You can take birth as gopis when I appear in my next incarnation." And they did that. So they're also part of the whole group. This is explained at the beginning of the Rasa dance. Srila Prabhupada's introduction, very important, chapter 29 of Krishna book. It's straight out of Vishwanath Chakravarti's commentary. Of all the different groups that have taken birth, some are just devotees from earth who are graduating to that stage. And many are the eternal consorts from Golok Vrindavan that accompanied him. And then you have these two categories of sages who are taking birth, so it's kind of complicated. I think that's who you're thinking of. One of those two groups, either the personified Vedas or the sages in Dandakaranya forest. So the idea is that ultimately everyone is eternally has a place in the spiritual world, and we have an eternal Sarup. And so that we don't know now, but it could be a gopi, it could be a cowherd boy, it could be a cow, it could be something like that. And we'll be completely satisfied when we find out what it is in serving Krishna in that way. So the gopis who are manifest on earth and eventually go back to the spiritual world may be coming from these different sources that I just mentioned. So that's how it works. It can be quite complicated. But there's also the eternal consorts in Goloka Vrindavan who they've been there for eternity and always will be. But the intricacies of how that service is rendered, that's explained in books like Ujjvala Nilamani, Govinda Lilamrita, and it's unlimited varieties. Any other comments or questions? Oh, Vijay.
Yes, Hare Krishna, my humble obeisances, Dravida Prabhu,
Haribol.
and happy Radhastami to you, Prabhu, and to the ISKCON San Diego Sangha.
Likewise.
Prabhu, thank you. My question is related to Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, chapter 4, text 71. There's a quote in the purport written by Srila Prabhupada, your spiritual master, and the quote is as follows. Quote, "She is all spiritual, and both her body and her mind are of the same spiritual embodiment.
Yeah.
Because her body is spiritual, her senses are also spiritual. Thus, her body, mind, and senses fully shine in love of Krishna." End quote. So, Prabhu, my question is related to these two words, fully shine. Prabhu, and my question, it is as follows. If because the body of Srimati Radharani is spiritual, and because it is spiritual, fully shines in love of Krishna, my question is, in what measure the material body of a conditioned living entity living in the material world can be immersed in hatred of Krishna?
In hatred of Krishna?
Yes, the opposite. Instead of loving Krishna, hating Krishna.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is when the soul is completely covered by the modes of nature, then you're forgetting Krishna completely, and then you're competing with Krishna. This is read chapter 16 of the Bhagavad Gita, and you get those kind of attitudes, and you read the Krishna book, Kamsa. Now, Kamsa was a fortunate soul because he was killed by Krishna, but he was just so angry and afraid of Krishna. He had all of these, plans, Kuvalyapida and the wrestlers and his soldiers and everything, and finally he was confronted. And so that hatred means because you are so much in the mode of ignorance and passion that you see Krishna as a great competitor. It's a total illusion, because by nature we're part and parcel of Krishna, meaning that we're meant to give service to Krishna. We're completely happy. So this is what we see all over the world. I mean, people don't even hate Krishna; they don't know about him. They've never heard about him, or they have a complete misconception if they hear. So they just think he's a figment of someone's imagination. So they don't hate him, but their activities are such in competition that they really hate themselves. They're doing everything possible to bury themselves in degradation and suffer like anything. So this is the material condition. And when we read Lord Rishabhadev's instructions in a few weeks, or maybe less than a few weeks, we'll see the means of getting out of that. But the actual condition, as Prabhupada would often say, yes, you can become a hog, a stool-eating hog, or a worm and stool. Just imagine, from the spiritual world, serving Krishna, we turned our back and we become so degraded that we take the most abominable situation. But there's a way back of reformation. So instead of competing with Krishna, forgetting Krishna, or even hating Krishna, we can become purified and love Krishna. And sometimes it happens very suddenly. What happened to Putana? She was the worst. In my humble, calculation, I could be wrong. She was the most abominable hair-raising demon. To have a pastime of killing babies and drinking their blood. I mean, what could be more horrible than that? We don't want to think about it, right? Well, that was what she was doing. She wanted to do with Krishna. But he's so merciful, and there's a famous verse about this, which I won't quote because I want to give my little poem here, praying for the service of Radharani. From that position, Krishna purified her, sucked out her life, her air, along with the milk that was tinged with poison. And she was so purified, she gets a position as a wet nurse, at the right hand of Yashoda in the spiritual world. Who could be more merciful than that? Giriraj Swami chose this verse as an example. How could I take shelter of anyone more merciful? That's part of the verse. So he's directing it toward Srila Prabhupada, of course. But it's a famous verse. So it's all a question of contamination and covering of our original consciousness. And so our task as devotees are to stay in the fire of purification by not backsliding, as the Christians say, and become pure so that our original relation with Krishna will be manifest. Now, if
Dravida Prabhu, again, spectacular answer to my question. Hare Krishna.
Okay, Babu, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so you have a question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So one of the quality you read was she is the most famous of submissive devotees. You have any comments on, like?
You mean that doesn't jibe with her attitude, or? You can broadly define submission as always doing something that most pleases the person who you're submitting to. And so she's fully aware that Krishna enjoys, her anger that he's hanging out with Chandravali, and her refusal to meet with him because of that. This is part of the whole mood. Krishna wants to forget himself as God. That's explained in this chapter also. Neither the gopis nor I will notice this. In other words, we will forget that I'm the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He says, when my mother chastises me, this steals away my mind from the words of the Vedas. Therefore I want to experience that. So when Krishna is late to the rendezvous, Radharani becomes very upset and stalks off, and then chastises him. And Lalita also helps her with that. Krishna loves that. That's because it means that they're forgetting that he's God, and that he can also forget and then work so hard to get her favor back, and she always gives the favor back, and it adds to the mix, of the whole thing. So that's real submission. And when as explained here in other words, she's very respectful to the elders. That's the proper attitude toward the respectable elders, and she's beloved by everybody. Yashoda says that Yashoda loves her as much as she loves Krishna. She's not different from Krishna. So this is how it works. What real submission is. And if you allow me, this is in the Govinda Lilamrita, there's a song by the Shuka and the Shari. The Shuka is a male parrot, and the Shari is a female parrot. So the one to Radharani, sung by the female parrot, this was famously and beautifully recorded by Bhakti Churu Swami. How many years ago? It's been 10, 12, 15 years ago. He sung it. Kunkamakta kanchanam jagavahari goraba, with wonderful instrumentation. I won't try to imitate that. So that's the Sanskrit. And years ago, we're going back to 1995, 26 years ago. I was working in Brisbane, Australia, believe it or not, completing the Chaitanya Charitamrita for the Australian BBT. They were the ones who first published the revised version, 9 volumes. And I was staying, and they gave me a nice office to stay in. And so, waiting for the composer to give me more copy and stuff like that, I encountered this, and I memorized it, and I put it into a poem. So if you allow me to share it, it's a prayer to have the service of Srimati Radharani's lotus feet. That's what it is. So I'll just give the first Sanskrit verse, and then the rest I'll just do the English. Kunkamakta kanchanamja gavahari goraba Pita nachitabja gandhi kirti nindi sodaba Ballaveshu suna sabha vanchitarti sadika Maya matma pada padmadasya dastu radhika. Her gold complexion steals the pride of golden lotus tinged with red. Her fragrance mocks the scent of lotus bloom with saffron powder spread. Her skill in satisfying Sri Hari is perfect and complete. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Her wondrous silken garment shameless splendor rubies can display. She is a blooming garden where the bee of Krishna loves to play. She worships Surya every day, so she and Madhava can meet. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Eclipsed by Radha's tenderness, the fame of budding blossoms dims. The moon, the lotus, sandal paste, and camphor serve her cooling limbs. When Krishna burns with love desires, her soothing touch dispels the heat. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Though youthful goddesses adored by all adore the goddess Shri, she lacks Sri Radha's beauty, youth, and every other quality. So when it comes to lovers' sports, with Radha no one can compete. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Within the rasa dance, her joking and her singing are the best. She shines with countless traits divine, like love and gorgeous form and dress. Among the famous gopis of Vrindavan, she's supremely sweet. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Her eternal pastimes, beauty, youth, and love for Krishna make her rich. The loving gopis tremble just to see her love at highest pitch. Her meditation on Sri Krishna's form and pastimes is complete. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Perspiring, trembling, hairs on end, and crying, faltering of the voice, impatience, joy, and guile. These signs of rapture make her friends rejoice. For Krishna's eyes, these many gem-like ecstasies provide a treat. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Apart from Krishna for a moment, Radha feels anxiety and restlessness and other moods, the highest kind of ecstasy. But when she meets him with some effort, all her sufferings retreat. May Radhika bestow on me the service of her lotus feet. Exalted goddesses like Parvati can hardly ever see Sri Krishna's lover Radhika, but if a humble devotee recites these verses, then Sri Radha, who enjoys with Sri Hari, will pour the nectar of her service down on him eternally. And there's also one for Krishna, which I won't recite at this time. So it's almost time for the greeting, and I think we can assemble. Thank you very much for your attention. All glories to Srimati Radharani, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol Prabhu.